Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Jeff Luciano, CEO of High End Group and High End Multi-Processing. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jeff.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, Jeff, I always like to start it with how you got involved in the cannabis industry.
Well, actually, I originally got into the cannabis space in 2016 when I was brought in as a consultant to help a associate of mine who was converting from medical cannabis to recreational cannabis in Oregon. And so that's where I began getting involved into cannabis. And then shortly after that, New York State started embracing the industrial hemp. And so so we were working with the state and we're one of the first companies to be issued licensing here for cultivation and processing of industrial hemp. So we knew that cannabis would be coming to New York, and we felt that being involved in the industrial hemp space would be a good precursor for the cannabis once it eventually came to town.
Well, you guys nailed that one.
Yeah, it was good, and you know, New York has always been a little bit slower. We are progressive with a lot of, you know, on a lot of fronts, but, you know, New York wanted to make sure that it set up its cannabis program correctly. And, you know, I think that, you know, you have to give a lot of credit to the earlier states because they're the pioneers that really brought this industry forward. And so for all of us, we are really appreciative for those earlier states. But there is something to say about coming to the party a little bit later after things have developed and we can see some of the missteps that some of those earlier states have gone through. And we fortunately can, you know, learn from those mistakes and try to implement a system here that is, you know, that'll be quite beneficial for both the companies that want to be involved in it and the consumers that will use the products.
Now, what I like about this story is that you saw another article that we ran on Cannabis Equipment News about, you know, after things went legal in New York, not every city, village, township was happy with it. And some of them banned dispensaries. And you reached out because you actually were behind when dispensaries were banned in Spencer, New York. You and your partner actually fought to get that decision reversed.
That is correct. So New York State provided an option to allow local municipalities to opt out of either dispensaries or on-site consumption. So New York is one of the trailblazers when it comes to on-site consumption because a lot of states just have the dispensary and they're still kind of wrestling with how consumers can use cannabis in a public environment. So I had been working with our village board for many years. We have a very good relationship. I work with the local municipality. I work with the county, and I work with the state a little bit. And so I had been working with our village board for probably about 6 months, specifically talking about cannabis once the legislation was passed in April of 20 and kind of like getting them ready for it. And the response from the village board was pretty positive. To give you a little background about Spencer is a very, very small village. We have probably about 600 to 700, maybe closer to 700 residents within the village. And then there's about 22,000 total residents in the surrounding town. So we're not a real big area, but we are centrally located. We're about 20 minutes south of Ithaca, New York, where Cornell and Ithaca College are. We're about 45 minutes from Binghamton, which Binghamton University has done some really good research on cannabinoids. Cornell was one of the leaders in the industrial hemp movement here in New York State. So it was a great place for us to be located. And so the response here originally was pretty positive for cannabis. And so when we were at the December of 20 meeting, we were really kind of taken back by their decision to ignore the voices of the community, not just myself, but the voices that came out to state their opinion, mostly positive for cannabis in the community during the public hearing. But the board decided to go their own way, ban it, and kind of use what I felt was a pretty lame excuse, is that they felt that New York had not defined their regulations enough. And so the village board wanted to say, hey, we're going to say no now, but once the regulations are defined, we'll then opt back in. Mm. But the problem is that once the village board passed the law, it was on December 6th, then the community at large, the registered voters, only had 30 days to compile a petition and submit it. Once that 30-day window had passed, then the only way cannabis could be allowed would be if the village board, which is a group of 5 people, made that decision upon themselves. Mm. And we felt, myself and my partner, Nancy Murray, that, the voters and the community should really make that decision and not be a small group of people that, may or may not, have, I don't want to say they don't have the best interests of the community, because they do. They work very hard. They get no money. I think the mayor makes $200 a month. So it's really all done to help the community. But sometimes blinders get put on, and our community is known to be a little hesitant toward change, if I could say that. Mm-hmm. And then basically we took it upon ourselves, Nancy and myself, and we said, we're going to get this passed. We knew that there was a lot of support for it. So we spent the month of December going door to door, and we were able to secure about 25% of all the registered voters to sign the petition, above and beyond what was needed to get the referendum put up to a vote.
So that couldn't have been easy, going door to door in a New York winter.
It was cold. It was myself and Nancy. So we did have some assistance from a couple people in the community that that knew some residents, and so they went and they got a couple signatures. But Nancy and myself pretty much did it ourselves. We funded the whole campaign. We went door to door every day. It was kind of a tough window of opportunity, because in New York, in particular in the wintertime, it gets dark about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and most people are going to be at work during the day. So we only had about an hour and a half between about 3 to 5, 4:35 that we could really go out, because I don't know about you, but in the wintertime when it's cold and it's dark, people are kind of knocking on your door, especially it was also during COVID. So this was the beginning of the next surge that was happening. So it just had a lot of factors. So it was very time consuming, but both Nancy and I are dedicated to not just bringing cannabis here, but bringing economic opportunity to our community. We are a small agricultural community, and the introduction of hemp and cannabis is something that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And we felt that by saying no to it, they were just making a rash decision without really taking all the factors in of how it could really benefit our community.
After you had compiled all the signatures, when was the subsequent vote?
So we had 30 days. So we submitted the petition. I think it was January 3rd or 4th. It was the first Monday after the new year, and we submitted it. And the vote was on March 15th. So the village board did do a number of things to try to disqualify. They went through and they were very nitpicky. We knew all our signatures were valid because we went door to door and we had contact information. But, just kind of things like if somebody signed with their married name, not their maiden name, then they got disqualified because it didn't exactly match and stuff. And so they tried very hard to knock our count down, but we were successful with that petition. And then March 15th is when the vote happened. But prior to that, we spent about a month, developing yard signs, banners, postcards, campaigns. We had a website, which is actually still up. It was called SpencerCannabisVote.com. So we really were just trying to educate the public and also combat a lot of misconceptions and rumors that were circulating around. I mean, if you allow cannabis into a community, then within a year your community is going to be in disarray, and you're gonna bring all this crime and all these negative factors are going to come to your community when the data doesn't demonstrate that from the other states. And it just was a little far-fetched. But when people aren't educated, then they can believe things that they hear, especially in a small community, because gossip spreads around. People can say something and all of a sudden it goes. And there was some misinformation that was being passed around, but we felt it was important. We provided the information. We provided links to New York State so that people could do their own homework. We provided them the answers, but if they wanted to verify that the answers we gave them were correct, they then could go to New York State and verify that information was in fact correct.
As you're going door to door, were you encouraged? Was it difficult at times? Did you find out stuff about the community that maybe surprised you?
We were very, very surprised at the positive support that the voters showed up. And we had very few houses where people were against cannabis. And some of those, some had valid reasons for it. But most people, again, were just kind of confused. We had one house we went to, and even though we were talking about cannabis, they were assuming that we were lumping in other illegal drugs like the opioids. And so maybe someone in that family had problem with addiction with opioid. So they were saying that by allowing cannabis, we're in essence saying we're now going to allow drug dealers on every corner and everybody's going to be hooked on illegal substances, which isn't correct. And we also found it a little difficult because usually when we went door to door, we were only able to get one person out of that house because maybe the other person was working or somebody was dealing with childcare or just different schedule. And so we felt very positive that we were able to get a wide variety of people to sign, the voters to sign, but very few were they multiple people from the same house. And so with that, we knew that the support was on our side, and so we went, and the banners and the yard signs, and we were very, very surprised that the community really wanted to have all these signs up, and it was great. And we did learn a lot about our community. Our community is a great small community, and when you present an argument with clear facts about, hey, we're trying to elevate and boost the community, it goes a real long way. And then also too, we had to educate people that we were doing all this, we were funding this, we were going out and doing this, and we didn't have a personal stake in dispensaries here in New York. New York has very clear language that if you are going to be involved in cultivation or processing, you are not allowed to be involved in any type of dispensaries or retail or delivery. So they had that kind of firewall between the two. So we were doing this not for a personal benefit, like, oh, great, now that we have this path, we can set up a dispensary. It was more that we wanted to have this opportunity available for whoever else wanted to come into our community and set something up, follow all the rules and set it up. And it was more of, hey, how can we help our community with this opportunity to create this revenue stream from the taxes as outlined in New York State. So it was very good, and we met a lot of people. And even though we'd been in Spencer for about 12 years, we didn't know a lot of our community, and this allowed us to meet a lot of great people.
So you get the signatures in December, the votes in March. How does the vote go, and what's happened since?
So the vote was on March 15th, and in New York, March 15th is the election day for all villages. So all our village board was up for election. And in small communities here, there aren't a lot of people, vying for these types of, pro bono type of work for the community. So nobody was competing against anybody. It was one person was for the mayor, there was one, for every board seat, there was one person running. So usually we don't get that many people that come out to vote. A mayor has been known to win a Spencer election with 30 and 40 votes. So getting people to come out was a little bit of an obstacle. And we were very determined, and we sent out letters, which had a lot of information. We sent that out about 2 weeks before. Then a week before, we sent out postcards with, save the date. We sent out emails, we made phone calls, we sent text messages just to let everybody know that this is the day. And when it came around, it was successful. Our vote did pass to allow dispensaries. It was a little bit closer than we would have hoped, but unfortunately, I think that there was some last minute misinformation that was kind of circulated around that kind of caused some of our older voters to believe that misinformation and to vote against it. But we did pass, and the vote was verified. It was a simplified vote. So it's not like your traditional vote where you're voting for, the president or your normal national election where you fill things out. It goes through your voting equipment and stuff. This is pretty much, you went there, you got a blank piece of paper, and it had, check box. Do you want to allow cannabis, and do you not want to allow cannabis? You fold it up and put it in a box. And at the end of the voting period, there was a team, they opened up the box, and we count the votes by hand. One of the most challenging aspects we had was the wording of the initiative, because the way it was presented, and not all municipalities did this, so it kind of went to say how our community was trying to stack the deck against us. But we had to convince people that they had to vote no to allow cannabis. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but to allow cannabis, the municipality needed to opt in. And so they had opted out, the village board did, to prevent it, to prevent them from operating. So we had to basically educate the voters and say, hey, look, you need to vote no, opt in to allow this to happen. So that was a little bit of an obstacle to overcome. And it took a little bit of time, and it took a little more education, but eventually we did get everybody to understand how to vote, and again, we were successful.
What was the misinformation? Was there a last minute push of reefer madness?
Yeah, there was a lot of that around during the whole process. We had somebody at the public hearing before we did the petition, but one of the arguments that was being made was that New York State, because they were rushing, people felt we were rushing to approve cannabis, that they were saying that New York State could impose fees, just ridiculous, tens of thousands of dollars of fees on local municipalities because they were going to allow a certain business to operate. And I remember saying, where in the history of New York State, or any state, in the United States for that matter, where a municipality had to pay the state money to let businesses operate. Now, businesses can be charged license fees, and they have costs to create their business, but those are all passed on to the businesses. So a municipality doesn't say, hey, I'm going to allow a supermarket to open up in my town. I have to pay $100,000 to New York State. That's completely ridiculous. And then another misinformation is that, and I know this happens in a lot of other states, but while New York is still rolling out its program, there's been a lot of, quote unquote, non-authorized stores that have been popping up for the past 6 months here. And those are donation-based stores, or they sell you something else and you can leave with cannabis or cannabis-based products. And so I think the rumor mill started going around that that we were gonna, as soon as this law was changed, that we ourselves, myself and Nancy, were gonna engage in this type of behavior. And we had been telling everybody since day one that, first off, we cannot be involved in dispensaries because of what we do with the industrial hemp and our pivot over to recreational cannabis. So I kept saying that. And then the other point was, if somebody was going to open up one of these, non-authorized types of dispensaries, why wouldn't they have done it? You don't go and vote to change a bill that you're trying to circumvent. So I think that sort of hysteria started coming in at the end. And I think that really happened when a couple of the village elders saw the support that we had, and all the signs and everybody talking about how this was gonna come to town. I think they just started panicking, and they didn't know what to do. So I don't hold any grudges to anybody. It's a small community, and I really do appreciate the work that our village board does, because it is a very thankless job. I mean, something happens, call the mayor, and he's got to deal with it, whether it's something like a bridge is out, or there's damage to a road, or we have a little pond here that tends to get a lot of geese, and the geese cross the road a lot back and forth, and could cause some not traffic jams, but things to pile up a little bit. So the mayor and the board has to deal with these wide variety of issues, and so we so we respect and appreciate that hard work that they do, but sometimes when they hold on to things incorrectly, or just don't listen to the voters or the people in the community, it can become a little frustrating.
So where does cannabis stand in Spencer, New York now?
Well, we are fortunate. So New York State has helped accelerate the recreational cannabis by passing a bill that was signed by the governor at the end of February. And what that bill basically said is that select hemp growers, industrial hemp growers that grew for CBD over the past 5 years that this program has been in effect, if you are a cultivator or a processor, then you are able to get what's called a conditional recreational license, whether for cultivation or processing. And so normally, instead of having to deal with that mountain of paperwork and applications to get approved, which, as we've seen in some states, that process can take a couple months to a couple years. This process in New York is very streamlined, and you're able to get your license in a matter of a couple weeks. Now, there's only a small number of companies that are going to be eligible for this. And fortunately, we are eligible in two different categories, one for cultivation and one for processing. For cultivation, I think there's probably maybe about 100 licenses or companies that will be eligible for this type of program. When it comes down to processing, there's really only a handful of companies that are going to be able to do this. So to answer your question, we are going to be setting up some outdoor cultivation this year for recreational cannabis. And I have an 18,000 square foot industrial hemp processing facility that we are converting over to recreational cannabis, which should be up and running once that outdoor harvest has been brought in. Because right now you can't process anything until you have a crop to process. And so this will be the first year that New Yorkers are able to grow cannabis outdoor. Our indoor program only allowed 10 licenses, and they were all held by mainly large multi-state operators. So this is the first time that smaller type of business owners are going to be able to engage and really grow some cannabis and get it out into the marketplace. So cannabis is coming to Spencer, and hopefully one day we will find a company that wants to come in and set up a dispensary here. But as of right now, they're just going to have to deal with some cultivation and processing from us.
So you guys were licensed both in the cultivation and processing side?
Correct. I have two companies. My first company, High End Group, was an industrial hemp cultivation company, and then I have a second company, High End Multi Processing, which just dealt with processing. What we focused on is large scale, wholesale oil. So not really making manufacturing product. So my facility here in Spencer for the industrial hemp originally started out, with great promise and everything was doing well. But as we all know, in 2019, the industrial hemp and the CBD market crashed. And so really the only way that industrial hemp processing can be really profitable and successful is if you're doing large scale volume. And so we are in the process. We've been working on this for about 2.5 years, and COVID did not help. But we are in the final stages of opening up a large scale industrial processing facility here for hemp that should be the largest in New York or potentially the Northeast, with a capacity of about 1,000 pounds per hour that we can run through. And so this New York law for recreational cannabis for us came at a great time, because as we're moving to this new larger facility, which should be operational in about 6 months, that left me with a full processing facility ready to go, with all my equipment set up, certified, GMP, everything. And so our pivot over to recreational cannabis processing is going to be pretty streamlined and easy. So we're just waiting for the crops to come in from the field. We're waiting for everybody to grow the cannabis, and then we'll be able to start processing.
Is Nancy Murray your partner in both companies?
She is. She Nancy and I are partners both in business and in life. We've been together for 25 years. And so we work together, and and so we do everything together. It's actually a very wonderful type of relationship. We balance each other out quite well, and it's a great life. I mean, it's great because we get to do industrial hemp and cannabis, and we can create medicine and products that people can enjoy and can be beneficial to them. And then it's great to be able to to work with the person you love day in and day out. And then on top of it, we have a 2.5 acre complex where our 18,000 square foot facility is. We also have a couple apartments there, so we actually live on site. So it's great that you only have our commute's it's about 100-foot walk to the office. So it's great. And it's enjoyable. We've had some tough times with the industrial hemp space because, as I said, and people are familiar, that the industry really dropped dramatically in 19 and early 2020. Then we had COVID, which everybody had to suffer through, and so it's been tough, but we're feeling pretty good about it right now, and we're just looking forward to the future.
As part of this pivot to cannabis, I mean, it sounds like a lot's going on. You have the cannabis facility coming online, the new, potentially largest hemp processing facility coming online. How have you been able to manage that from an operational standpoint? And what are some of the things that you consider when you're bringing equipment in?
Well, first off, none of this is done alone. And so the team that I work with is amazing. And they've been with me through thick and thin with the hemp and now pivoting to cannabis. So right off, I mean, as they say, you need a village to really build or do anything. And fortunately, we have that here. And so that's how we're able to stay on top of everything. And with equipment, as it relates to equipment, we've been fortunate enough. I'll give a shout out to a manufacturer. We work with a company called Thar Process out of Pittsburgh. And I'm close with with the president, CEO, and a number of the people below that. I feel that they have the best when it comes to CO2 type of extraction equipment. They've been in the industry for a long time. They came from the pharmaceutical side with CO2 extractions even before we really were using it in the cannabis space. So their knowledge of the industry is solid, and they've just done amazing work with their advances in equipment. And so I recommend anyone who is looking for CO2 extraction equipment to consider Thar as an option. They can be a little bit on the higher end of things, but I kind of call them the Rolls Royce of CO2 extraction equipment. Everything's fully automated. You're able to stay on top of all the different data points you need. So, it allows you to create a superior product. That's that's who we use here. And and that's who I recommend.
Will all of the equipment in the old hemp facility make the transition to cannabis, or do you have to make some upgrades?
No, most of the equipment is going to be able to go. We got our extraction equipment, our filtration and secondary equipment. That's all. I mean, that's all great to go. Distillation equipment. Yeah, all that's good. We are going to bring in some additional downstream equipment to make retail based products. So we're going to get a rosin press, and we're going to get equipment to do vape cartridges and things like that. But the main equipment that's needed to take your flower into your oils and your distillates and everything like that, that's going to be able to stay the same without really any sort of updates. And then we also have our analytical equipment as well. So we run in-house analytics here, so that we're able to not analysis, analysis and testing. So we run all our like mass spec and HPLCs and all that stuff.
Okay. Were you surprised when New York gave out the licenses specifically to hemp growers, or was that something that you saw coming?
Well, we knew that there was going to be a clear pathway for industrial hemp companies to pivot over. We knew this specifically as it came to the processing. The cultivation was a little bit more of a pleasant surprise. When you're talking about industrial hemp, cannabinoid processing, when you move over to recreational cannabis, there's not that much of a difference. You already have to be certified. You already have to deal with the record keeping. So that framework is relatively the same. There are some more hoops you have to jump through when you go to recreational cannabis, but overall it's very similar. When you talk about cultivation, industrial hemp is easier to cultivate from a logistics point of view because you don't need fencing or extra security. You can just put it in your field, and so you don't have to deal with all the record keeping and seed to sale tracing. Now with recreational cannabis, all that comes into play, and it just, I felt that it was going to be a little bit more of a uphill battle. But New York did a great job with this program. And they said, we're going to give the license to you select companies, but here is your schedule of deliverabilities. We're going to give it to you, and in 30 days, you need to do A, B, and C. And in 60 days, you need to do D, E, and F, and 90 days and 180 days. And so everything that normally would be required for a recreational cannabis application, prior to issuing that you would need to put together, they gave us about 6 months to be able to complete. So I think that a lot of hemp farmers are going to have trouble with it because they're not familiar with that type of record keeping. But at least New York is giving us the opportunity to be able to do this. Now, the one thing that New York State did, which is amazing, is that they've given us clear definitions of what we need to do to transition from a conditional license, which is what they're issuing, and the permanent licensing, which should be available in the next, 12 to 24 months. And that'll be your traditional licensing and everything. And you'll have to go through the full application process. But we only have to apply once. And once we have the conditional license, if we do everything that they say we need to do and remain in good standing, then we have what's called the transition, which means we don't have to reapply. We can just transition over to that permanent licensing. But there are a lot of factors in there. New York is focusing very, very heavily on energy efficiency, on green cultivation practices, water use. So everything that is that surrounds cannabis, besides just the cultivation of the plants and keeping track of everything, how you do it, using solar, alternative energy, all those types of factors are going to be in play for us as we go through what they call the transition.
Do you have any apprehensions with transitioning to cannabis cultivation?
I don't, because there are differences between industrial hemp and cannabis, but the plan itself is very similar. And so I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing group of growers that know this plant inside and out. And so that takes a lot of that stress off of my shoulders, because I mean, as you said, I mean, I'm dealing with a lot, and I haven't even gone through. I mean, we're also dealing with pharmaceutical applications of cannabinoid medicines. It's another company that I'm involved in, an owner in, that we're getting ready to finish some phase 3 clinical studies for cannabinoid medicines that we're submitting to the FDA, and they should be on the market in probably about 18 to 24 months. And so it's having people that specialize in cultivation, have people who specialize in processing. That right there, I believe, is the winning formula, because if you have people you can trust, that you can rely on to do what needs to be done, then whenever you have a hiccup or a problem or something comes up, then everybody can communicate, and we all put our heads together, we find a solution, and then we're able to get back up and running.
What were some of the missteps that other states had that you believe New York learned from and kind of got it right this time?
Well, I think New York was very tough when it came to medical cannabis. So when they started issuing, there's 10 medical cannabis licenses that are in existence. Originally, there was 5, and then they did a second wave where it was another 5. And so the program that New York State had for medical cannabis was extremely, extremely restricted. So you weren't allowed to use flower. You could only really have some vape cartridges or a couple edibles. And so these large multi-state operators, for the past number of years, they've been investing tens of millions of dollars, and they really haven't been able to run at full capacity, more like 10 or 20% capacity, because there wasn't a customer base. I have a friend of mine who, when he was in his late 20s, he had kidney failure, and he had to get a kidney transplant. Now, it took him 18 months to get a doctor to prescribe him medical cannabis. And he lost both his kidneys and had a transplant. If somebody who has a transplanted organ is unable to get cannabis to help them, then there's something wrong with that program. So So unfortunately, it was difficult during that process for people who needed the medical cannabis. However, other states that were a little more permissive with the medical cannabis really, I think, kind of messed things up a little bit. If you look at, say, Oklahoma, Oklahoma embraced medical cannabis, but they were a little lax, from my understanding, on record keeping and how everything was being overseen. And so Oklahoma has become one of those states where there's a lot of backdoor cannabis that's crossing state lines. So I think that those sort of it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's great, that you're able to access cannabis, but if you don't really have good oversight, then it can go, that genie's out of the bottle, and then it becomes difficult to put it back in. California is another example. Now they're the trailblazers, and we all appreciate everything that they did with their initial bill almost 30 years ago. But, California is a mess, and it has a lot of still gray area growers and black market growers and things of that nature. So, I'm just happy that we're here in New York. We made it through the tough times with the medical cannabis, and now I think we're ready for the new dawn, and hopefully we'll be able to do it right and set up a successful program here in the state.
What are your expectations over the next year, say next 5 years, for your company or companies?
Oh, well, we have a lot. My main goal is to build and develop my companies so that I can be proud of them, that my employees can be proud of them, that we can create quality products for the marketplace, that whatever communities that we're involved in, that we can help give back to those communities. Besides having a successful company that has, high profit margins and a lot of revenue, that's all positive. And of course, that is a major focus of mine, but also how we can help contribute to the creation of a new industry, and how we can help elevate that industry from something that, like people here in Spencer who maybe have misconceptions that we're just talking about, legalizing drug dealing. And that's not what we're doing. We are creating an industry, creating a product for people to use that are adults. And we need to all come together and put our best foot forward so that we can lead by example. And that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to try to lead by example and say, here's how we can create successful companies that are pro-community, pro-business, pro-social economic opportunities, and really kind of elevate. And then also too, with my pharmaceutical company, we're really excited about the medications. We have a cancer drug that that should be coming online. We have an epilepsy drug, which is which should be more effective than GW Pharmaceuticals epilepsy drug, and we'll be able to beat that price point considerably. And our secret weapon that we have is we have an Alzheimer's medication that we are very, very excited about. And we're getting ready to set up that. I think those clinical studies will probably be starting sometime in 2023. Mm-hmm. But Alzheimer's has been something that it affects everybody. My partner Nancy, her mother suffered from it, and I think if you really take a poll of most people, someone in their family or a close friend or someone that at work or somehow connected to them is dealing with Alzheimer and any sort of brain cognitive issues can be very difficult. And if we can create an FDA approved medicine that is botanical based, cannabinoid based, that can help people, I think that's an amazing goal to try to accomplish.
That is an amazing goal. And I think you're right. Having personally been touched by family with dementia and Alzheimer's, man, you're doing the good work, man, on your end.
I appreciate that. I want to do a quick shout out though. That company is called AMC Pharmaceuticals. Okay. And so we work with a pharmaceutical company called MGC Pharmaceuticals, which is one of the leading cannabinoid pharmaceutical companies in an international space. And we are their North American partners.
Okay. Okay. Well, you've been very gracious with your time. One thing I always like to ask is, do you have a personal connection to cannabis?
I mean, yes, I enjoy cannabis. At the end of the day, I'm not someone who consumes cannabis during work or anything like that. I think it's important to, if you're going to be successful, that you're clear and you're focused, and I think it's important for the industry at large to know that we're not a bunch of stoners who are sitting around every day getting high, and things like that. That we're intelligent, that we're hardworking, that we're focused, and that at the end of the day, when we're home, we just had a little bit of dinner, we're getting ready to sit on the couch, watch a little TV, interact with the family, whatever you do to relax at the end of the day, that having cannabis is a good option. I personally do not consume alcohol, and I never really did. And so having something that I could use at the end of the evening, has always been very helpful for me. And so I guess I do have that personal connection to cannabis, where I think that the prohibition that we've had to go through over the past 70 plus years has been ridiculous. And we all know that there's just so much. The war on drugs was horrible, and it affected a lot of people. And so now, if we can all do our part to, change that sort of perception, I think it's on all of our shoulders to try to do our part and pitch in.
Well, that seems to be one of the components that New York's really stressing too, is the social equity component of cannabis legalization.
Yes, that's been one of the main issues, and our governor actually issued a press release maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where she's going to allocate the first 100 dispensary licenses to people that have suffered against the war on drugs. And so whether it's social economic, whether it's just, the communities that were targeted, minorities, all those factors. And so I think that this is, which is a great way to help people that, maybe they had something in their past, and they, 10 years ago, got caught with a, well, fortunately, New York has decriminalized cannabis for a long time, since the 70s. So unless you were someone who got caught with a large amount of cannabis, if you got caught with an eighth in your pocket, it's been a ticket. So fortunately, we've been progressive with that. But overall, the war on drugs has been a failed war. We've spent way too much money. We should really focus those resources on how we can help people that are struggling. I don't think cannabis makes you struggle, but other types of illegal substances. And I think that we should try to be a community and a country that tries to help people when they're struggling, as opposed to incarcerating them. And so I believe that New York is doing, I have high hopes for what our governor wants to do here in New York. And I support it. And if we all deserve a second chance, especially when that first chance might have been taken away from us for an unjust reason.
Was part of the selling point for the community in Spencer, New York, the potential additional revenue that the town could use to build itself up?
That was one of the selling points that we pushed. And New York State has a 3-tier taxation system, and the 3rd tier is for local benefit. And so for everything sold at a dispensary, there is a 4% excise tax that is added on. So you sell $100 worth of cannabis, it tacks on an extra $4. That $4 is then broken up. 25% goes to the county, 75% goes to the local municipality. In our case, it'll be the village of Spencer. Now, our annual operating budget for the village is very, very modest. And just having a dispensary in the village could add 25% to our overall operating budget. Now, to give you an example, we only have enough money in our village budget to repave like one road in the village a year.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had extra revenue, maybe we could do 2, 3, or 4. We've had instances where a small bridge might have got washed out from a rainstorm, and it might take 2 years for us to have enough revenue to be able to fix that. Mm. And so, yes, I mean, that's one of the things. I wanted to make sure that we could say that Spencer is open for business, and we support all local and legal business opportunities that are available. And that's what we were trying to push, here, because there's our sister town, which is about 6-7 miles away, and they allowed dispensaries. So if we didn't allow it here, everybody was just going to go to the next town over or 2 towns over and spend their money there. And so why don't we have that money here so that we can elevate and we can help support our community? I mean, there's a lot of students that go to our public schools that have food insecurity. And if we can create revenue to support our local food banks, I mean, that would be amazing to help, older students have opportunities so that they don't, that they can do after school, activities, and we can help the sports community and help, domestic violence and education and just the overall, our fire department, our fire department's a volunteer fire department. So is our EMS. And so if we can have extra revenue that we can get some new equipment for these types of organizations, I mean, that's going to go so far in elevating the overall well-being of the community.
Jeff, before we get out of here, is there anything in particular that you want to make sure the CEN audience knows about your companies?
Well, you kind of got me a little speechless. We covered a lot. I don't want to be, I'm someone that likes to have my work speak for itself, but, I'd like to say that, supporting cannabis businesses wherever you are, especially smaller type of businesses, I think is a great thing. We look forward to working and helping New York State define this new emerging industry. And we hope that people, if they're visiting New York, that they, that they purchase our flowers or our products that are produced. And we don't have any sort of brand development yet, but, things will be coming down the pipeline. But, we'd love support, and we'd love that. And we'd also really love, if there's anybody in the science community that's focused on cannabinoid research and wants to learn about what's going on in that industry, you're great. I mean, because I believe that separate from recreational cannabis, because, I think that's, once we have that, that's great. But I think that the real next frontier for us as a nation and the world as a species, for us to really dial in on the science benefits that all these new cannabinoids, not just THC or CBD, but all the new emerging cannabinoids that are out there, that we can really start studying them and creating new types of medicines and products that we can really, help, because our bodies like cannabinoids. We have receptors to take them in. And so, our genetic makeup is to consume these cannabinoids. And so there's so many benefits that are yet to be discovered, what these new and exotic and rare cannabinoids can do. And I think it's really important that we get the federal government to remove the schedule restriction on cannabis so that we can start doing more research. I hope that, universities, there's any universities, we do work with a number of universities, some top tier universities, but if there's other universities or hospitals that want to engage these type of activities, that they should reach out. And, if we all come together, we can really make a real positive change with how we treat medicine and cannabinoid. And cannabis shouldn't be a bad word. I mean, I guess marijuana is taking the hit, and now the bad word, and now we all say cannabis. But we need to change it, and people need to say cannabis. It's fine. I may not use it, but I believe that there's benefits, to it. And if people want to use it, I support their decision to do that, and I support the research and development of how we can use this natural plant and all its wonderful mystery to help us heal ourselves and elevate our standard of living.
Well, Jeff, your passion is contagious, and I just really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Well, I appreciate that. Is there going to be information, contact information on the podcast?
Yeah, as to how to reach out, how to reach you?
Yeah, if people want to learn more about, some of the pharmaceutical things or other things like that.
Yeah. What's the best way to reach out?
Well, I guess you could just, just send emails to me. You could send it to Jeff, Jeff at highendgroup.com, or you could send it to Jeff, Jeff at high-end processing, or Jeff at highendpharma.com. Any one of the three, it'll get to me, and we'll go from there.
All right, and I'll make sure to have that contact information posted in the description as well.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you very much for doing this podcast. It's the first time I ever did a podcast. I really appreciate it. I get your newsletter blast. I think you guys send it every day, so I look it over every day. I think you guys are doing great work advocating. I think we need a lot more people focusing on cannabis equipment and what's good, and who's fly by night, because we got some of them in our industry too, and really helping new companies getting into the space have a resource that they can trust, that they can turn to, and I'm glad that you guys are doing the good fight there.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. All right, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help out the podcast a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, for Jeff Luciano with High End Processing, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.